To me, there are probably 4 candidates for this award. I guess I can just give some nods to other dudes first. Stevens, Spoelstra, Frank Vogel was good for the Lakers. But to me, it's really a 4-guy race. It's between Mike Budenholzer, who would be a back-to-back Coach of the Year winner. I'm sure that's happened at some point. I'm not going to check. Nick Nurse for the Raptors. Billy Donovan for the Thunder. And I don't know if a Coach of the Year ever has gone to an 8th seed, but I do want to put Taylor Jenkins in there as well, because the Grizzlies far surpassed expectations, I would say. I don't think any of us believed that they could have been a playoff team in the Western Conference. And, I mean, it would have been close down the stretch, no doubt, but they did have a 3.5 game lead on the Blazers and Pelicans and Kings. And I kind of feel like there's a decent chance they would have got there. So, those are the 4. The case for Budenholzer is that the Bucks are amazing, and the system he puts in there with floors spaced out as possible and opening up the floor for Giannis. And can we give Bud credit for having Giannis shoot threes? Maybe not. The fact that the Bucks starters play so few minutes and they're so dominant is pretty wild as well. However, Budenholzer did win it last year, so maybe he wouldn't have a real chance at winning it again. I don't know what the politics of the NBA Coach of the Year award really are. Like with the MVP, you can usually kind of see the way it's going to go in terms of, oh, is this guy a first-timer? Is he a back-to-back or whatever? This would be Coach Bud's 3rd Coach of the Year, so maybe the voters would just be like, all right, we've had enough of this guy. But I think you still need to give him his props for his performance this season. Now, could you knock him down a peg because he hasn't had significant injuries and he hasn't built up a not as good roster? Sure, he certainly has the best player out of everybody who is a candidate in my opinion. And Chris Middleton also had a hell of a season, and perhaps it's like, how much credit do you give Middleton for that? How much credit do you give Budenholzer for that? Because all that movement and the handoff plays that they have, that certainly benefits Middleton, no doubt. If we go on to Nick Nurse, so I predicted the Raptors would be like the 5th or 6th seed because I just didn't think their offense would be as good as it has been. And between Lowry and Siakam and Norman Powell and OG Anunoby, like everybody's brought it offensively. Ibaka as well. Van Fleet got a little better. So I do want to give a lot of credit to Nick Nurse there because, for one, we've seen the Raptors do some really wild things this year between a full court press. He busts out his zone random times of the game. Their defense continues to be smart and versatile and so well disciplined. And that's after losing Kawhi and Danny Green. Of course, he's got a lot of good, just natural defensive players there, but you got to give Nurse credit for it as well, I would think. And he's also done a really good job of dealing with injuries. I mean, between Chris Boucher and Terrence Davis, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson is another one. Like, he's just taken these guys who are forced into these roles and he's finding ways to have them be productive. I mean, Chris Boucher, there's a case to be made that he's a all-defense guy in hiding. I mean, he's a little older. He's like 27, but the things he's done for the Raptors here is pretty wild. And again, I think Nick Nurse deserves a lot of credit for that stuff. If we move on to the Western Conference guys, with Taylor Jenkins for the Grizzlies, he has done a good job of giving Ja Morant the tools to be really good right now. I mean, it is another one of those things where it's like, well, how much credit do you really want to give the coach for the team drafting an awesome rookie? But I am going to give him some credit because we've definitely seen some good young players, even if I can't think of one off the top of my head, who were not used to the best of their abilities right away. I mean, here's an example, Giannis. Before Budenholzer got there, we knew that the Bucks were not set up correctly around Giannis, you know what I mean? So, for Taylor Jenkins to just give Ja Morant the ball, run pick and roll, and do that stuff, I think it's worth praising in terms of the spacing of the team, and he didn't bury Jonas Valanciunas, which I think is admirable because Valanciunas was kind of buried for the Raptors, I think, when Dwayne Casey was still coaching. And Jenkins saw Valanciunas, and he's like, yeah, I know you're not the player that everybody really wants nowadays, but Valanciunas still has a lot of value as a finisher, a screen setter, a rebounder, and he's improved defensively, right? So Jenkins has started him there, and he's just kind of let him be him, and that's been good. I think it's been a good decision of his to not just thrust Jaren Jackson into the center role right now, because Jaren probably still needs to gain a couple pounds, and he has dealt with foul trouble all season. So it's like, if you throw him in to be the main dude on defense, it could just make those problems even worse. And then he's had Brandon Clark moving off the ball and setting screens, and Dylan Brooks has developed well. So I think Taylor Jenkins has definitely done a good job. Now, with all this being said, I think it's still going to be interesting to see how good Taylor Jenkins is when the expectations are higher and the game plans are a little more locked into slowing down Ja Morant and whatever else, because I feel like the reputation of this team really became something about midway January. And is that enough time for teams to really know how to attack these guys? Maybe, maybe not, but basically, I just want to see what happens when this team is expected to be like the 4th seed next season, because I feel like that's kind of going to happen, even if it's fair or not. So, yeah, but as of right now, this season, I think Taylor Jenkins has done a really good job. And then we move on to Billy Donovan for an OKC team that I did not think would make the postseason, partially because we didn't know what the team was going to do, if they were going to look to trade some guys or if CP was going to be healthy, but even so, we were all, at least I was wrong about these guys. They're passing the ball a lot more. That's one thing I'm noticing. In 2018-19, they threw about 240 passes a game. This year, it's up to about 290. Of course, they have, I believe, the best lineup in basketball, which is Schroeder with the starters, replacing, would it be Terrence Ferguson, Lou Dort, whoever it would be. And they've been great. I mean, it's Chris Paul pick and rolls, it's Shea, similar things, but there is more side-to-side ball movement for this team than we've kind of ever seen with OKC, and I'm trying to not have this be a subtle shot at Westbrook, but I mean, even if you're all aboard the Westbrook train, we all understand that he didn't exactly accentuate ball movement possession to possession, right? Whereas this OKC team is doing that a little bit more. Even if at the end of games, a lot of it is Chris Paul pull-up mid-rangers and, you know, pick and rolls and ISO situations. Is there anybody else I can talk about before I inevitably give this to Nick Nurse? I do want to say, if Luka and KP were not dealing with injuries, I think Rick Carlisle would have had a real chance here, because Dallas was pretty legit to open up the season, and then Luka got hurt and their momentum got killed a little bit, and maybe they could have went on another run because, you know, they were spacing the floor out, and doesn't Dallas have the best offense of all time or something in this regular season? Like, it's that sort of level of stuff. So yeah, but I mentioned it earlier, I'll say it now. Nick Nurse is the winner to me. I think he is the best coach in the NBA at this point. I think he has surpassed Popovich, partially because Pop is not really dealing with the best roster right now. But I just think Nick Nurse he's like the ultimate combination of respecting modern day basketball with 3-point attempts and going small. You know, he of course was the guy who finally moved Ibaka to center and all that. But he also still kind of holds up some of the old time basketball stuff of, like I said, full court press. Who the hell's doing a full court press semi-regularly nowadays? You know what I mean? Who's doing zone defense when 3-point shooting is what it is? And another thing about Nurse that I think is really cool is, like, you just look at his 2 most used lineups. One of them is Gasol and Siakam for your front court. Pretty typical, even if we rewind like 10 years. But then he also has Ibaka and Siakam as the next lineup that has been most used. And then he has a lineup where it's Ibaka at center with OG Anunoby as the power forward. And then it's 3 guards playing with those guys. Like, he's just so willing to do whatever. And of course he has a very good roster. And it's very versatile and all that. But still, like I said, Ibaka wasn't playing center until Nick Nurse showed up. And other things like that. So Yeah, that's my pick. Nick Nurse, Coach of the Year.